Welcome to the Christian Romance Podcast, where we go behind the books with inspiring Christian romance authors, exploring faith, love, and the journey that brings the story to life. I'm your host, Kelly Jo Wilson, and today we're chatting with Roseanna White. Roseanna is a best-selling Christy Award-winning author who has long claimed that words are the air she breathes. When not writing fiction, she's homeschooling, editing, designing book covers, and pretending her house will clean itself. Roseanna is the author of a slew of historical novels that span several continents and thousands of years. Spies and war and mayhem always seem to find their way into her books to offset her real life, which is blessedly ordinary. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can hear more about our new book giveaway for this month. Now, here's my conversation with Roseanna. Hi, Roseanna. I am so happy to have you on the Christian Romance Podcast today. Thank you so much for coming and for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's always so much fun to chat with podcasters.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you've been very busy. I cannot wait to talk about 2 new books of yours. And I can't wait for the readers/listeners to hear more about your books. But why don't you kind of start by just letting everyone know a little bit more about your writing journey, about you, about how you got started, and about how you came to write these beautiful historical Christian fiction novels.
Well, I'm one of those people that has been writing fiction since I learned how to write. Like first grade, you learn to pair a subject with a verb, and they gave us our very first short story assignment. That was it. I was done. It was,
Awesome.
That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I wrote, short stories all through primary school. I wrote my first novel in middle school, and actually that one went on to become The Lost Heiress, which is my bestseller of all my books so far.
Oh my gosh.
So it underwent a few revisions between 13 and 29. But yeah. So that one took 20 years to get published, but it was still my first book. And so then I just kept writing. And in college, I was actually a tour guide, and I went to St. John's College, which is the great book school. You just read and have discussions for 4 years. And I was a tour guide. So every time I gave a tour, it would come up that someone would go, well, what do you want to be after college? And I'm like, a writer. Because, you know how to, the best way to be a good writer is to read great books, right? So that's what I figured. But that's when I came up with the saying of words are the air I breathe. And I've been using that ever since.
I love it. I love it.
Because my whole life is books. So I write, I design covers, I do typesetting. My husband and I run a small publishing company. It's literally our entire lives. There's not a wall in our house that is not covered with books.
Love it.
Yeah. Writing has just always been my passion. So when I got out of college, I started submitting it to publishers, it being whichever manuscript at the time, because I had 8 finished by the time I finished college.
Oh my goodness.
So I got serious about it and started going to conferences and submitting to everyone I could find. I tried all different genres because I love historical. Historical romance was my first love. But when I was in college, I started writing contemporaries because they took a lot less research time.
Yes,
I was busy. So contemporary seemed fun. So I started writing those. So I tried my hand at a little bit of everything to see what I really loved and what hit at the right time. So it happens that publishers actually that I had met with other submissions started knocking on my door saying, hey, do you have anything like that's a historical set in maybe Annapolis, Maryland? And I'm like, yeah, I can totally do that. So yeah, it took probably 10 years of, pounding the pavement and knocking on doors and getting to know people in the industry. But yeah, I started we do own a small publishing company. So we started with my books there. So between that and then Guidepost, Summerside, and Harvest House, and then Bethany House, and now Tyndale, I've kind of just worked my way through the industry and trying out all the different publishers and getting to know everybody. And it's just such fun.
Oh, it's wonderful. You have such a hustle in you. I love that your book was written whenever you were in high school and then you continued and you stayed at it. Because most people that I talk to that have that, they put that sucker in a drawer. And they're like, nope, that was to get the kind of juices flowing. But I love so much that is you just kept with it. It's like your first one, you just developed it and it kind of evolved with you. There's like a really special connection, I feel like, with
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Do you feel like that with that
Oh,
book?
absolutely. Like the main characters in that one are Brooke and Justin, and I just they were part of who I am, right? So they've been with me since I was 13 years old. So I like all through my life, I'm picking out actors that could play them, and I've written so many other books by the time that this one comes around. But then my agent let me know when Downton Abbey was big that editors were looking for Edwardian Downton Abbey style books. And she's like, "Do you have anything?" And I'm like, "I could." So I pulled that sucker back out and brushed it off, rewrote it for like the fifth or sixth or seventh time.
Right.
It had undergone a lot of rewrites. But it was so much fun to bring them back and put them in a new setting. It was originally Victorian, but I, advanced it into the Edwardian age, and it worked so much better that way. So it was just one of those, like, obviously this is the story God always meant it to be. We just needed to go on a little life journey to get it there. So yeah, I was just thrilled when that book finally came out. It was like 20 years in the making. Yay!
Oh, it's so great. I know. Congrats on that too, because that really, you have to have a certain, you can feel the call on your heart, right? And the Lord gives us the desires of our heart, right? So he knew right away, like you had this desire to write. Words were the air that you breathe, for sure. I love that too. And you have this desire, but having the desire doesn't always push you,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of moxie to push forward and to really put your pitch out there and to keep going and to keep at it. Was there anybody in that time, especially because too, I just want to add that a lot of times with authors, there's it's so few and far between. There isn't really somebody that you necessarily know that is also a writer or also has done it. A lot of times in most people and most authors' lives, it's something that's like an uncharted territory.
Mhm.
Did you have somebody that was really encouraging to you in that time, that was kind of pushing you and just like in your corner and encouraging you to continue to go to conferences and things like that?
I absolutely had cheerleaders. I didn't know any writers,
Mm,
but my parents, my mom especially, was always very much like, do whatever it takes. Well,
yeah.
she started, paying for me to make these submissions when I was 15 years old. I
Aw.
started submitting books. I would like to say that Bethany House turned me down 2 times on this same book before they bought it. Eventually,
That's so
the first time when
crazy.
I was 15, I got a rejection from them. So
Aw.
hilarious. But so my parents, my family were always so encouraging. And my husband, I actually started dating him in high school, and he thought it was so cool that I was a writer, and basically promised me he would do anything he possibly could to make me a writer. And so he's been
Aw.
in my corner all along. He started a publishing company for me. I mean, come on. So great guy there. And yeah, so when I started realizing that, there are these things called writers conferences. Wow. He's like, well, we need to save up and get you to one of those. So that was really when everything started changing. When I went to my first writers conference and I met editors and I met agents and I met the person who is now my best friend in the world, Stephanie Morrill, who's another Christian fiction writer.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
so we were both pregnant at the time, me with number 2, her with number 1. So it's really easy to track how long have we been friends? Oh,
I
right.
know.
Almost 17 years, because that's how
kids'
old our
ages.
children are. So
Absolutely. I know. Especially once you have kids, it's like timing works so different. It feels like
yeah.
everything goes so fast, so you don't even realize, right? Like you look at your kids' ages and you're like, "Oh my goodness, it's been 17 years."
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that you had people in your corner, because not everybody does. Whether it's writing or whatever it is, it's difficult because
Yeah.
sometimes when you're stepping outside the box and not, say go into college or doing an expected kind of route, because there's such a stigma, I feel like, with being a writer, and even something that we say to ourselves, we get that imposter syndrome where we're like, how are we going to make a living at this, and what it's so hard, and it's the scraping by and starving
Yeah.
artist kind of thing. But
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure, it's tough. So I love that you had that.
Yeah.
It's, what a blessing, and what a way for God to really show you that that's your path too.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference to have supporters in your life, because, like,
Hmm.
especially with something in the art community where it's not instant success ever, right? Like, you have to build up and build up and build up, and you work a long time before you start seeing any payday most of the time.
Yes.
And that's certainly how it was for me. But I had people willing to say, well, I'll take the kids on Mondays so you can write. Or, I'll do the ballet run so you have a deadline coming up, that sort of thing. So my whole family and my in-laws and everything have always been so supportive. And they knew that it was a dream that required a lot of hard work, right?
Yeah,
so
that's great.
they always had my back and did everything they could to help. And yeah, so it's never just, one person's success, right? Like it's the village.
Oh yeah, it takes a village for sure, for sure. But it is good to be around other writers as well. I'm glad that you have that even in your family, but also once you start going to conferences and meeting friends like Stephanie, and it really helps in a different way, because then you're like, oh, okay, you're just getting among people doing the things that you also want to be doing. It's just as simple as that. I think that's such a good encouragement, even to somebody listening who might be thinking about doing something that is, out of the box thinking or something like that. Just get among people that are doing it, and you gotta,
Absolutely.
just learn everything that you can. And like how you said, I mean, you just had so much hustle, and it's just paying off so much. You're impacting so many people. One thing that I did see on your website, on something that you shared about your patrons and peers, which I can't wait to hear you talk more about, was how you have heard writing to be either, there's hobby writers, there's career writers, and then there's ministry writers. And I love how you said that yes, you are a career writer because you're making that, this is your career, you're an author, but you are also a ministry writer, right? You want to reach people with your words. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you do that with the community among patrons and peers?
Yeah. So I have to give credit for the hobby, career, and ministry to Susan Meisner, who taught a class ages and ages ago that talked about these 3 levels of writers. And it just like stuck with me.
Oh,
like a decade,
maybe
15 years later, it still sticks. But yeah, so I knew as soon as she enumerated that I am a ministry writer. I will write whether I am making money from it or not. And it's great when it could like feed, support the hobby sort of thing, feed the addiction. But that's secondary. First is that God has laid stories on my heart, and I need to put them on paper or the computer screen, as the case may be. So it's like non-optional for me. I have to write. So to be able to write and put it out in the world for people, and have a chance for the things that are clamoring around inside my head to resonate with other people, is just like the dream, right? Like that's all that matters. That's really all that matters. It's very nice that I can get a paycheck and my family can eat. That's wonderful too. But first and foremost is just honoring that call that God has put on our hearts. So a couple years ago, I guess we're coming up on 3 years now in January. My husband was just talking to me about, the Patreon things and all these different support groups. And he's like, you should consider putting together something like that. And I'm like, I totally should. So this is typical me. 3 days later, I announced that I'm doing this. And my husband's like, maybe you should think it through a little more first. Like, let's get some stuff in order. And I'm like, no. We're just going to run with it.
Just do it. You're such a doer. I love it.
So we did. Yeah. When I get an idea, it's like, we don't test it out and see if it's going to go. I just like hop on it. My husband's like, oh my gosh, not again. But he's great. So I just put out this call for, hey, we're going to start a community, because this is my passion and I want to know what your passion is. If you are one of my readers and, you love the things I create, I want to be part of what you are creating. So I put together patrons and peers, and if I have several different levels that you can join at, like for as little as like $5 a year or whatever, and you're just in the community. But if you do one of the monthly options or a bigger annual option or something, then you get all my books when they come out and they're signed to you and everything. But what has happened with this group that both shocked me and thrilled me, because it's exactly what I wanted, was the ladies who joined did exactly what I asked, and they opened their hearts and they told me their passions, and they joined the groups that we started. So we have an email list, we have a text thread, we have Marco Polo, which is a video chat app.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just talk. And so like we're part of each other's everyday lives at this point. There are probably 30, 35 of us now. And we're a sisterhood, and it's just amazing. Like, I don't know how it happened, but it's this awesome thing where it started out where we're all just, strangers getting to know each other, and then within a month they're calling each other sister and saying I love you, and it's like, oh my gosh. So it's been amazing. We've gotten together a couple times, whoever could come for like retreats and stuff, and we have a huge Houston contingent. There are like, I don't know, 6 to 8 ladies in Houston, so they get together for dinners and they call themselves the Roseanna girls, and it's amazing. I just I have a hard time remembering what life was like before I had this wonderful group that was just there all the time, right? So it's an amazing group.
That's unbelievable. I love that so unbelievably much. Like that, what a way to share, to have such a fellowship in this ministry of writing, and you're sharing, and then to hear their story is probably so rewarding, because then, you all can just encourage each other within that and with, whatever you're trying to do, and just, oh, that's just wonderful.
Yeah,
That's absolutely
it's amazing.
wonderful.
We pray with each other. Like we tend to be the first people we go to when someone has a medical concern or a prayer request or something. It's like, it's always, I haven't even told my kids yet, but I had to tell you girls, sort of thing. And it's just amazing. And there are quite a few writers in the group, a couple that are published and some that are just budding writers, and they want to get the behind the scenes. And we have a spiritual director. So last year she actually monthly went through and did some spiritual exercises with us. Ladies from all over doing all sorts of things. But I love that we've just become such a part of each other's lives. And it's amazing.
Absolutely. Now, so if somebody is listening today, how would they be able to sign up and be a part of it?
If you go to my website, there is a tab for patrons and peers, and it walks you through the different options that you can do. And you just, you basically just purchase it on my site, and it's a subscription, so it'll renew automatically. And that's it. Then as soon as I see the order come in, I send you the email with all the links, and you can join this and join that and join the other thing. And yeah, we do tea parties whenever I have a book out, so I started before COVID, mind you, this thing called the Tea Party Book Club, which is a book club chat on Zoom. But I send you a tea party package. So it has tea and cookies and cakes and candies and all these fun things. So it's like a tea party in a box, and we open them all up and drink our tea and eat our goodies together while talking about a book. So the patrons and peers had demanded their own tea parties. So I don't send out boxes.
A separate tea party for the patrons.
There are so many of them. They would fill up all the others. So I don't send out packages to them for these. It's just bring your own goodies and let's have a book club chat. But we still call them tea parties because that's what they started calling them. So yeah, we have one of those coming up soon for Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor, and everyone's just so excited. And it's like, it's so great because the whole group's together, and it's all like, there you are. I haven't seen you in so long. So it's wonderful.
I love that, because especially if you guys are that tight, sometimes you don't realize, once we get older and we have families and stuff, you're not hanging out with a lot of friends anymore. You start kind of losing touch with people, just because everybody's trying to do that, right? Like right. I have friends that I've had since I was, in grade school. But everybody is trying to do their life, right? Everybody, it's busy, and their moms are getting married or whatever's going on. And it's so nice to be able to know that you have this special group, to have this special time, to do tea parties. I just love it. It gives you something to look forward to. And you really can just help each other along the journey of life, because you really need that. It's just so positive. I love it. Something that I saw that was pretty interesting about the tea party, about the book club, is that you have a scholarship program with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So since this is something that involves a box of goodies coming to you, it has a cost. It can't be free. So I knew that, not everybody's going to be able to pay $25 or whatever it is in a given month to come to a tea party, because I know how budgets are, right? I'm a starving artist. I know how this can be. So I had the idea of, let's just start a scholarship fund for it and see if that works. And from the very first people who booked a tea party, I had people donating to the scholarship fund. So sometimes they'll donate $5. Sometimes they'll donate an entire party for someone. So I keep a running tab of what I have in my scholarship fund. So sometimes it's zero, what, I don't have any scholarships for a given month. But other times I've got $50, so I can let 2 people come if they apply for a scholarship. So the scholarship application is on the Tea Party page. And if you want to come to a party and you don't have the money, you just fill out the scholarship and tell me which party you would like to go to. And if there's the money to cover it, then I let you know and send out the package to you and you get to come.
I love it. Thank you for doing that, because right now, especially like just the way the economy is, and especially like us being in an election year, it's people are getting scared. Everything
Yeah.
and inflation is nuts. I mean, groceries are like triple what they used to be. Everybody's getting creative with how to bring in income and how to manage different things. And this thing, the Tea Party Book Club, is such a wonderful service to people, and it's something that I would imagine women think to treat themselves, which is unfortunately like the first thing to go
Right.
whenever you're trying to manage, budgets and things like that, and feed your family. So I love that you have that. I think it's so wonderful. So I definitely will have a link to your website, all your your book links, your website link as well in the show notes, so people listening can just go right to the notes and
Yeah,
just click on it.
absolutely.
Get
And
patrons and
as of
peers.
today, I don't have any scheduled, but I intend to schedule some for the 2 new releases. I kind of put them on hold while I was going through cancer because that was just something I didn't need to fuss with.
Oh,
But it will
yeah.
be coming back.
Oh my goodness. How are you feeling? How are you doing now?
I'm feeling great. I'm done chemo. That was the part that I was feeling sick for, the entire summer. So that's done. I've gone through surgery and I'm recovering from that very nicely. So have not started radiation yet. That's next up. But I hear that other than, getting there every day, it's really not that bad. So yeah, we'll be all done soon. Ish.
Oh, good. Yes, it's very tough. I am a nurse. I have had taken care of many patients that have gone through different things. Mainly, a lot of patients that I would take care of were pre and post lung transplants, so they were
Oh,
pretty sick.
yeah.
Sometimes, unfortunately, the different medications would cause them to need to get another transplant because
Ooh,
they were so rough on the body. But a lot of patients that had different cancers and things like that. I also had cancer as well, so I can understand it is such a journey, and I love
yeah.
that you have such a wonderful support group around you, that you have your family, you have your writers friends, you have your patrons and peers, and it's really important because it's kind of weird that sometimes whenever cancer happens in your life, you'd be surprised. It scares people sometimes, and sometimes people are the people you thought would be around are not, or that would support you aren't. So I'm very happy that you have such a good support group around you. Ugh,
Yeah, I
I
I have been blessed just over and over and over again, and I've talked about this in some of the things I've written. But my patron and peers groups did what I called them encouragement bombs. So every time I
aw.
had a chemo infusion, I'd go down to the mailbox and just there'd be all these packages and letters and notes, and they would just schedule them to arrive at infusion time. But each lady would just they divvied up who would send what which month, and they would just send something, and no communication on what it all was, I don't think.
Aw.
But so I just got this wide variety of stuff from fun encouraging books to sweaters to treats and all this stuff, and it was just so amazing and encouraging to go down and just find this love in the mailbox, right? So I totally named them encouragement bombs because they just bomb you with them every 3 weeks. It was great.
Oh, that's beautiful. And thank you, whoever, if any one of you is listening, thank you so much for encourage bombing Roseanna. We need more encourage bombs in life.
Right? Like that's the kind of
Especially,
bombs we need.
yes, we need encourage bombs. Exactly. Yes, you're 100% right. Well, you are certainly doing that with your Tea Party Club and book club, patrons and peers, just, in your presence and your wonderful books, your beautiful words are very encouraging. These stories. So I have a funny question that probably everybody's going to be like, why are you asking this? And I'm not trying to hammer you.
Bring it
Um,
on.
I've always been a contemporary reader. Okay.
Mhm.
I love the contemporary romance. I've always read the contemporary romance. I'm the slowest reader ever. I wish I'm trying to get faster because there's too many books that I do not want to miss reading and I don't want to miss out on them. And then there's just, it's just amazing, especially like with these beautiful books that you have with these historical books, it's unbelievable. So tell me, somebody who is usually a contemporary reader, what is the difference other than just the years essentially between the Edwardian and the Victorian era? Like what would it be like comparable to? Because I have seen Bridgerton. I've seen some episodes of that. I haven't watched Downton Abbey, but just tell me what the difference is.
No problem.
So I know.
So Bridgerton is Regency. So that's the early 1800s.
Oh, okay.
When there was a regent ruling England, which is where you get Regency as the name. So then from the time Queen Victoria took the throne to when she died is the Victorian era. So that's kind of early to late 19th century. Don't ask me the exact years. I'm not quite that precise, but it's like she ruled a long time. Okay. So that would cover like the American Civil War was in Queen Victoria's age. So mid 1800s is kind of the height of the Victorian age. So when I wrote something Victorian, it was set in the 1860s. That was me. Late Victorian would be 1880s to 1890s. And then her son took the throne and he took the name of Edward. That wasn't his original name, but that was his name he took upon ascending the throne. So the Edwardian era is the early 1900s. And then there's some debate about whether you still call it Edwardian once you get into the World War I era or not. He was still the ruler at the time. But then, war kind of supersedes everything. So when I write Edwardian, it's going to be from 1900 through the end of the Great War is what I personally consider Edwardian. So kind of 1900 to 1919.
Okay, so now thank you very much because I figured it was like in that time, just because, and even whenever I talked to Tracy Peterson, she was talking about that because she's done different eras for that too. So yes, thank you so much for that. Now, is there a particular kind of time that you prefer or that is like one of your favorites?
Honestly, I love history, so I can be perfectly happy writing any historical era at all. And I have written many different historical eras over the years. I was in Edwardian for a long time and like a decade. And I really liked it because it's a fascinating era because you still have the old-fashioned morals of the Victorian age. You still have the beautiful dresses and everyone's expected to, dress for dinner and all that stuff. But you have the introduction of modern technology too. You've already had electricity, telephones are coming in, automobiles are coming in. So it's this wonderful clash of the old and the new and how society had to change very quickly to accommodate that because the Industrial Revolution has already kind of done its work and we haven't had the total upset of the world wars yet. So it's this fascinating dichotomy of you still have the very, very rich and the very, very poor, which began to stabilize a bit with middle classes after the world wars. But you have the high fashion, you have the servants in the manor houses, but you also have so much change coming in society and culture. And you have the labor unions and the women's suffrage and all these things are getting traction. So it's just so much fun. And there's just so much going on that you can focus on.
Oh, yes, for sure. And then whenever especially like the women's suffrage, because when you're writing these characters, right, they're dealing with these things that are so different. But you're seeing them, especially Edwardian era coming into, the 1900s and things like you said, how it's modern technology. It's so neat to see those different struggles because there's struggles that are just the same across every time frame, right? We all have fear and grief and, different things with family struggles and things like that. But it's all, because an underlying theme can be similar, but it's neat to read about those times. It's such an escape. It's just so interesting. To read about that, the different things that they would use, like, just simple struggles that would be simple for us now that we're like, well, that wouldn't even be an issue. And then, but it's a big issue, with class and things like that back then. It's so neat to be like thrust into those worlds.
Yeah. And there are so many kind of horrifying parallels between like the World War I era and today's era that deal with a lot of the same hot topic button issues that you don't always want to read in a contemporary form, right? Like I don't pick up a contemporary novel to read about politics. I just don't. But
especially now. It's
right,
crazy.
right.
Yeah.
But if the same issues come up, but set 100 years ago, it's like, it's just enough removed that I'm not afraid to tackle it, right? Like I don't feel like, oh, this is just today, right? But when you read it and you read the same things, it still resonates in that place where you're dealing with it. And it gives you a different perspective. And it shows you that people already went through this before and they came out, they came out fine on the other side. They came out stronger, more faithful. So having those examples also can just be so encouraging for us today.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because there's nothing new under the sun. It's been
Nope.
said so many times, but it is very encouraging. But I do think that isn't it funny? Well, you would know this better, especially being such a historian. I mean, you have to be a historian. Like I thought it was so funny when you said I didn't have enough time to do the research, because there is a significant amount of research, right? Because you have to fact check, and it's different because it's not, the internet is helpful, I would imagine, but you have to go and talk to people too, because you have to get like the 3 sources and different things like that. And but it's just so crazy, because then you're dealing with one thing and then it's so similar in the future, and you're like, just look at what we did. Like, we already made these mistakes.
Yep.
What are you doing? Like, I feel like we have to go back a little bit more, like look into history a little more and say, what did they do? And are we repeating these mistakes?
Right.
Or are
learn from it. Learn from the past. Yeah.
Learn it. Exactly. Let's focus on good solutions. What were their good solutions? Let's focus on these. But yeah, it's just so interesting. It's so neat to hear your process too, and like how your excitement with doing all the research and things like that too. So we are almost at time. So I want to give you a good amount of time to talk about all this stuff. So first of all, oh my goodness, God bless you so much for bringing these beautiful books to your readers, and for being there for your patrons and peers, and for being there for your tea party book clubs and all of that, especially going through this journey of cancer and radiation. It's very difficult. You're such a doer. I could tell that right away as you were talking about how you were writing even in high school. And I just think it is so inspiring to other people, to myself for sure, to see you just happy and doing what God has called you to do, because it takes a lot of courage to obey his call on your life, and no matter what way, shape, or form that looks like. So I just want to say that. And knowing that even just you have these 2 books, I mean, 1 book a year is busy enough. Okay. You're writing, you're going through edits, you're, promoting, doing interviews. So having these 2 beautiful books come out just while going through all that, I think is very inspirational, just to let you know.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate you. I'm sure that the readers and listeners also appreciate you. I just wanted to let you know that. So why don't you go ahead? Why don't you start with talking about An Honorable Deception, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor.
Awesome. So An Honorable Deception is the 3rd and final installment in the Imposters series. So the premise of this series is that we have our brother and sister who are aristocrats. Yates is the hero of book 3. He's an earl. His older sister is therefore Lady Marigold, but they are absolutely strapped. Their father left them with no money at all to run their estates. And this is the era where, if you like sold your family estate, your family will never live that down, right? Like that's just taboo. You do not do such things. So they cut corners where they could. They had to dismiss most of their staff. Their only staff right now are a family of retired circus performers that had entertained them throughout their childhood. So, because their father wasted all the money on entertainment. So he would bring in circus troops and acrobats and actors and all this stuff. So this is made for a very charming childhood, but it left them very broke. So they have these strange skills, right? Because they have been schooled by acrobats and trapeze artists and circus performers and actors. So they decide to use these strange skills to open a private investigation firm. So they are the society's premier, but very anonymous private investigators. Nobody knows who the imposters are, but they can get in where no one else can because they are actually aristocrats. So they can get into the parties and they can get into the clubs and all this stuff. So they are making a living at this point in time. And we had 2 different cases for the first 2 books that the imposters were solving. And now in this 3rd book, we are focusing on Yates, who is the Earl, and he has had a point of view in all books so far, the first 2 books. And he's the lighthearted one, so he's the one making you laugh in the first 2 books. And now it's his turn. And boy, it really is time for this, because he likes to be center stage, right? Like, this guy's a ham. So he was waiting not so patiently for his turn. So in this story, in the very first chapter, he goes to meet with a client, and it's a young lady, and she's hiring them to find her nanny from childhood, an Indian nanny, which was called an Aya. And she hasn't been able to locate her, even though she got a note saying that Samira was in town. So she thinks something bad has happened. And this is an anonymous meeting. Like, you can't see each other. It's in an old confessional. And so Yates is like, all right, yeah, we'll take this on. We'll find her. But then the door to the church bursts open, and the lady bursts out to see what's going on, and she gets shot. So this is like chapter 1, right? Like, she has obviously stumbled onto something dangerous. So now Yates is like, oh, okay, well, gosh, this woman's unconscious and bleeding, and so I guess I'm going to take her home and pretend I'm not me, and we're going to get this taken care of. So we have the actual thing that they're hired to do of finding this missing Indian woman. But then we also have the thing she has stumbled across that she doesn't realize. And to solve this, they have to bring in an old neighbor to help out, because they have 2 of the 4 imposters are kind of out on maternity leave right now. So Lady Lavinia has to help. She's always been a family friend. So we have Lady Lavinia and Yates and Lady Alethea, who's the one who hires them. And it's just a wonderful exploration of some of the key issues of both that time and our time, because it deals with human trafficking. It deals with abuse. It deals with these heavy issues, but in a kind of light touch and sometimes fun way. But it's a wonderful, romance. It's a romp. It's, there's hijinks. And of course we have Yates' pet is a monkey, a Capuchin monkey, who always wears a tutu because she's from the circus. So Penelope. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love Penelope.
I know. She's so much fun. When one of my patron and peers girls was like, so who's Yates going to end up with? You're writing a love triangle. Don't do this to me. Who's he going to end up with? And I'm like, Danielle, come on. He's going to end up with Penelope the monkey.
It's Penelope.
And we just love that. So
spoiler alert.
Spoiler. It's all the monkey.
It's all the monkey. That's his girl. Penelopi. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
She's always on his shoulder.
I love, it's such a neat twist to have them all like trained and taught by all these eccentric people. It makes such a fun.
So much fun.
Yes, it's so much fun. You can throw in all kind of twists in there. Oh my gosh, I'm sold. She gets shot. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm in. This is what I mean. I gotta start reading more. I gotta read more and faster. I have tried to do the audiobooks too, to try to double up. I cannot wait. Oh, that sounds so fun. So this is book 3, you said, right?
Yep.
In the imposter series. So is this will kind of bring all those other characters in, and it kind of intertwines all of them. Oh, that's fun. So why don't you tell us a little bit now? Oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. This is like so funny. It's hard enough to talk about one book. You are so amazing. But I was looking at the Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor, and it looks so fun. And I also noticed on your website that you even have some recipes for that are like tied to your books and tied to this book. So why don't you definitely tell us a little bit about the Christmas story as well, and then about the recipes and the cool stuff you have alongside it.
Awesome. So Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor is an Edwardian set Nutcracker retelling. So when my editor asked if I would write a Christmas novella, I was like, yeah. And then I started thinking, I'm doing errands, dropping my kid off at youth group. And I'm thinking about all the times I was driving to ballet and, we were doing Nutcracker rehearsals. And I was like, a Nutcracker retelling would be so much fun. And it was. Rather than base it on the ballet, I based it on the original short story by E.T.A. Hoffman, which is it's a story for children, so it's not terribly long, but it gives you more of the backstory of why the Nutcracker Prince and the Mouse King are at war, and what's going on, like what this whole journey to Toyland really is. And it doesn't end there in the book, right? Like you don't just end still in the dream. You come back to reality, and it's just a delightful story. And I had so much fun taking the different elements and working them into this one. So we have our whimsical, fun-loving, very imaginative heroine, Lady Mariah, based on Marie, who is the character in the original. And then we have our prince character, who is Cyril Lightborn. And then we had to have our bad guy. And in the story, it's a Mouse King, and he has 5 heads for some reason, and he wears 5 golden crowns. So in my story, I have a Danish lord whose name is Gildenkrone, which means gold crown. So that's his name, and he is out to win an English bride for political reasons, to solidify the relations between England and Denmark, where he's from. And also, he and Cyril have already butted heads before the story opens, so he's out to get some revenge on Cyril too. So this was requested to be a very lighthearted, everyone's happy at the end, no heavy spy stuff like I usually write about.
I know, no heavy spies or wars.
Yeah, they're like keep the like suspense down to 1, and everyone's happy at the end, like everyone's redeemed. Okay, like all right, so no like killing the bad guys or
no killing people.
All right. So everyone in this story ends up happy.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so it's just a lighthearted, fun Christmas read. Yeah, it won't take you very long to read it, and it's just fun.
It sounds fun. It does sound really fun. Although I will say it is still fun if the bad guy isn't, happy at the end. Like that's okay too. But I get it. I get it. Having everybody be
he isn't
redeemed.
A full villain. He's just the antagonist. He's just out, against, your primary hero.
Right.
But he's not a bad guy. So by the end of the book, everyone's quite happy with how he turns around a bit. So
that's good. That's good. I can't wait to read it. It sounds so unbelievably fun. So before we are at time, I just wanted to kind of bring it around full circle and just kind of ask you. I usually ask my guests about a Bible verse that really encourages them. And I would imagine and I would hope that with you that you would have some anchor verses with you, especially, sometimes going through the journey that you're going through personally is very difficult. And no matter what, and even having the support system around us, we can sometimes feel lonely. It can be very lonely there. It can be scary there. Is there a verse that really is encouraging you, or even encouraging one of your characters within one of the books that you're writing? Was there a certain verse that stuck with you?
I have used all sorts of verses for my characters, and in each book, I often start with, a verse that kind of anchors the whole story. The one that has kind of overseen my entire writing career is from First Samuel, and it's when Samuel has first stepped into his role, and he did his first prophecy. He has heard the voice of God, who had been silent for generations. And we're just told that Samuel grew, and he grew in the Lord, and none of his words fell to the ground. And that imagery, I just sucked it right into my heart, right? Like that's my goal as a writer, that none of my words fall to the ground, that each of my words is for a purpose, and each of my words is to build people up, and it's to draw us closer to God and make God more real to the church, to the people that love him. And that's what Samuel did. And so he's just kind of my hero. Even though he wasn't a writer, he was a man of words, and those words built a nation and held together a nation and anointed kings and just spoke the very presence of God. And that's what I think every writer who is writing for God probably has this same goal, that they want their words to just stand firm and not fall to the ground.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's very, I know that that's personal, and it's very it's just so encouraging. And it's true. Samuel, I love Samuel. And him, what really resonates with me too is just the story of his mom, Hannah. how she prayed
Absolutely.
so hard for him. And she was so like, she went to God and was like, you know, freaking out. Like, you have to help me. I love her faith and her vigor, and, you know, how he came out and he was this man of God, and what a beautiful verse too. It's so true. And I can tell you as a writer myself, very, very true with that. We definitely want your words to be a ministry and to not fall to the ground. And I think that you certainly do that. And it's evidenced by your readership. It's evidenced by the people in your life, your husband, who is your biggest supporter. It's evidenced also by your wonderful patrons and peers, ladies. You know, your words are very encouraging, Roseanna. And I'm so happy that you're doing what you were really called to do. And just thank you. Please continue to do it. And I am always going to be supporting you and cheering you on in the background. Just thank you so much for your wonderful words and for your wonderful books. And thank you for being here today.
It was my pleasure. I forgot to address the recipes. Did you want me to real
Oh,
quick?
yes. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Yes.
So I love recipe blogs. I am a total addict. There are stages in life where I am on recipe blogs every day. And when I'm on recipe blogs every day, I'm of course thinking, I want to have a recipe blog.
Yes,
but I don't,
absolutely.
right? I don't need another thing that's totally separate. But I decided, you know what? A lot of my books have food in them, right? People eat. So I can have recipes that are featured in each book on my blog. So, that's what I've done. I have recipes that tie in with each book. Sometimes they are actually mentioned in the books, and sometimes they would fit. Like I have a family of innkeepers, so obviously they serve a lot of food. This could totally be served there. That could totally be served there. So tie-in recipes are on my website, and I have some fun Christmas ones for Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor, including sugar plums, which you can totally make at home, and gingerbread and all this other fun stuff. So
I was going to say, what are some of the recipes? Well, what's cool too is that the historical, because or they're set in a different era, a different era. So you have, you know, what are some of the recipes that you can just think of, if you can think of off the top of your head?
Sure. Well, for like my biblical fiction, I have a wonderful unleavened bread recipe that I love that has honey in it. So I have made that for many a Passover meal, and
nice.
It's delightful, and for communion sometimes. For the Imposter series, I have things like Victoria cake, which is a very traditional tea cake. It's 2 layers of a vanilla cake with whipped cream and some fresh fruit, basically. So can't go wrong there. I think there's jam between the layers. I have cinnamon rolls because that's very popular in several of my books because I really love cinnamon rolls. And yeah, so everything from homemade pizza to the desserts. I love desserts, so we have a lot of those. Porridge is from the Imposters because these aristocratic brother and sister make their own food, so they make porridge for themselves for breakfast. So some of it is historically accurate or taken from a given region. Some of it is from some of my contemporary work, so it's just things we enjoy now, might tie in with a season. But yeah, pretty much every series, if not every book within the series, has its own tie-in recipes on my website now.
That is so cool. I love that you do that because, man, that is such a neat way to immerse your readers into like that time period in just like a fun way. You know, like you have the tie-in recipes, and then especially if you're writing about them, and they sound delicious. I am also a big fan of cinnamon rolls, so I will be looking that recipe up. That's so cool. Thank you so much. And that's right on your website, correct? It's right on
it's just another tab. Easy to see.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds wonderful. And so if readers want to connect with you, what is the best way? Why don't you mention about your website? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. I'm at roseannamwhite.com. And from there or on social media, you can find me also at Roseanna M. White. I'm the same on all social media platforms, easy to find. The best way to stay in touch is to sign up for my newsletter. I do send it out once a week. So that's where I share everything. I share links to my blog posts, whatever's going on in my life right now. I share products from my shop and any giveaways that are going on. So that's just a kind of roundup of everything you need to know this week is right here. And that sign up is very easy to spot on my website as well. And you can always, of course, find me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I just started that this year, then got a little sidetracked with cancer, so have not felt like doing videos, go figure. But I am there, and I do have a presence on Twitter X. So you can find me anywhere. And I love talking to readers. So I claim I'm an email addict. So if you send me a note, you will get a response probably very quickly.
Aw. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that. Make sure you go and sign up for Roseanna's email newsletter so you can get updates on all these wonderful things that she is doing and her wonderful, beautiful book. Thank you for being here today. And just thank you for doing what you do. You're an absolute delight. I cannot wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button right now on your favorite podcast app. That way you can stay updated on new episodes, exclusive interviews, and our latest book giveaways. Each month, we host a themed book giveaway where you can win a selection of Christian romance novels and some extra goodies too. This month's theme is Cozy Christmas Romance Collections, and it's by far our biggest giveaway yet. You'll get 31 stories to snuggle up with by a crackling fire and a cup of hot cocoa. Perfect for the Christmas season, right? Whether you're listening right as this episode comes out or in the future and don't want to miss out on the giveaway, no worries. You'll find the link to the current giveaway on our website, christianromancepodcast.com. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, keep your faith, share the love, and happy reading.